It was one of those nights you never forget, the kind that feels like pure magic. The moment I walked through that door and heard everyone yell surprise, my heart just about burst. Balloons everywhere, fairy lights strung across the ceiling, my favorite people smiling back at me. And right there in the middle was Ryan, holding this gorgeous cake with my name written in gold. I felt so overwhelmed with love, so grateful, thinking, wow, how did I get this lucky? The room buzzed with laughter, hugs, and the kind of joy that wraps around you like a warm blanket. Honestly, it felt like I was living inside a perfect little moment. And then, Ryan introduced me to her. "Emma, this is Vanessa," he said, with that charming smile of his. "She's a friend of ours." I didn't think twice about it. I just smiled, reached out my hand, and welcomed her in like I would with anyone Ryan cared about. And honestly, she seemed lovely. We clicked right away, chatting about the food, laughing over some silly story, even snapping a few photos together like we'd known each other for years. Looking back now, it's wild how none of it felt off, not even for a second. And let me tell you, Vanessa? Oh, she was good, sweet, thoughtful. The kind of woman who notices your dress, refills your wine, and says all the right things to make you feel seen. By the end of the night, I actually caught myself thinking, what a wonderful person. I hope we stay in touch. I had absolutely no clue, none, that the woman smiling next to me, the one hugging me in those photos, wasn't just some guest. She was the woman my husband had been sleeping with behind my back, and she stood there, right in the middle of my birthday. You know what's crazy? Thinking back, there were no red flags. None. Ryan was the perfect husband that night, refilling my glass, checking if I was having fun, whispering how beautiful I looked every chance he got. And Vanessa? Right there in the mix. Laughing with my friends, complimenting my decorations, acting like she genuinely belonged in my life. There wasn't a single crack in their performance. Not one. If anything, I walked around that party feeling like the luckiest woman alive, completely oblivious to the fact that the biggest lie of my life was unfolding right under my nose. At one point, I remember standing there, looking around the room, thinking, wow, I'm so blessed. Everyone I loved was right there. My family, my friends, the man I trusted more than anyone, and her. And that's what haunts me the most when I look back. She wasn't just some stranger lurking in the background. No. She was front and center. She hugged me. She smiled at me. She looked me in the eyes, while knowing exactly what she was doing. And Ryan? He stood by, cool as ever, pretending to be the perfect husband, like this was just another happy chapter in our marriage. I even remember this one moment so clearly. We were taking a group photo. Ryan had his arm around me, and Vanessa was right there on my other side, smiling like she was part of the family. I didn't think twice about it. If anything, I felt grateful that Ryan had friends like her, kind, sweet, thoughtful. God, the irony, the sheer cruelty of it. Standing there, posing for pictures with the two people who were betraying me in ways I couldn't even begin to imagine. Smiling, completely clueless. I remember sitting there later that night, watching Ryan give this sweet little toast. He talked about love, about partnership, about how grateful he was to share his life with me. People clapped. Some even wiped away a tear, and there I was, soaking it all in, believing every single word that came out of his mouth. I looked at him thinking, God, I am so lucky to have a man like this. Meanwhile, sitting just a few feet away was the woman who knew the truth, who knew that every word he was saying was a lie. If you asked me then, I would have told you that night was perfect. I felt loved, celebrated, cherished. surrounded by people who cared about me, or so I thought. There was no doubt in my mind that Ryan was a good man, a loyal husband, the person I had built my life with. And Vanessa? Oh, she was just the sweet friend who somehow made the night even more special. Someone I was actually looking forward to getting to know better. Can you believe that? I welcomed her into my heart, into my home, into my life. But here's the part that still makes my stomach turn. They didn't just betray me. They did it boldly, fearlessly. They stood there, side by side, smiling in my photos, toasting to my life, hugging me like nothing was wrong, like I was the fool at my own party. And the worst part? I had no idea, no clue that the woman shaking my hand was the same woman who had been sharing my husband's bed. Not a clue that this beautiful night, this perfect little celebration, was nothing more than a stage, a show, a beautiful lie. For a few days after the party, I was still floating on that high. You know, that feeling you get when life feels right. I kept scrolling through the photos and videos, smiling at the memories, sending little thank you messages to everyone. And then, something caught my eye. A video one of my friends had taken, just a candid little clip of everyone mingling, laughing. But in the background, there they were, Ryan and Vanessa. And suddenly, something just didn't sit right. I paused the video, watched it again. There was this moment, so small that most people wouldn't even notice, where Ryan brushed her arm. Not accidentally. No. It was subtle, but it lingered. And then, the way they looked at each other. It wasn't friendly, it wasn't casual. It was familiar. Way too familiar. My stomach tightened. My brain tried to rationalize it. Stop it. You're overthinking. Don't be that wife. Don't be paranoid. But once you see something, you can't unsee it. I told myself to shake it off. Maybe it was just nothing. But deep down, this tiny seed of doubt had been planted, and as much as I wanted to ignore it, I couldn't. I felt it gnawing at me, this little whisper in the back of my mind saying, something isn't right. And I swear, once you start questioning one thing, suddenly, everything starts to feel like a clue, a puzzle you didn't even know you were supposed to be solving. A couple of days later, I was doing something completely ordinary, cleaning the house. You know, folding laundry, picking up jackets that Ryan always left hanging on the back of chairs. Same routine as always. And that's when it happened. I grabbed his jacket, and something slipped out of the pocket. A crumpled little piece of paper, harmless at first glance. But when I unfolded it, my heart practically stopped. It was a receipt from a hotel, dated 2 days before my birthday. At first, my brain couldn't even process it. I just stared at it, reading the address over and over. The hotel wasn't even far. In fact, it was right near the same venue where we had the party. My hands started shaking. I kept telling myself, no, this has to be a mistake. There's got to be some explanation. Business? Maybe a surprise planning thing for the party? But even as I said those things to myself, my gut was already screaming the truth I didn't want to hear. I stood there, gripping that tiny piece of paper like it was a ticking bomb. My ears were ringing, my mouth went dry, and suddenly, the whole house felt different, like the walls were closing in. I could barely breathe. This wasn't just a receipt. This was confirmation. Proof that something was happening right under my nose. That little whisper of doubt. Oh, it was no longer whispering. It was screaming. Something was wrong. Horribly, horribly wrong. I paced the living room, clutching that receipt like my life depended on it. My mind was racing, flipping between denial and this sickening realization that maybe, just maybe, The man I trusted with everything wasn't who I thought he was. I kept asking myself, could I really be that blind? Am I losing my mind? Or is there something right in front of me that I've been refusing to see? My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I sat down, staring at that stupid little slip of paper, trying to connect the dots. The hotel, the timing, the way Ryan had been different lately, a little more distant, a little too eager to be helpful, like he was compensating for something. And then my mind went straight back to that video, to that touch, to that glance. Suddenly, it wasn't just a weird coincidence. It was a pattern, a truth that had been quietly living in plain sight, waiting for me to finally open my eyes. I wanted to believe I was wrong. God, I wanted to believe it more than anything. But something inside me shifted in that moment. Something cold, something sharp. I knew. I just knew that this was only the tip of the iceberg. That if I had the courage to pull this thread, everything, and I mean everything, was about to unravel. I wasn't sure what I'd find. But I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't ignore this anymore. That night, after Ryan went to bed, I couldn't sleep. My hands were shaking, my chest was tight, and my mind kept racing in circles. I kept thinking, am I really about to do this? Am I really the kind of woman who checks her husband's phone? But you know what? At that point, I didn't care. I needed answers. I deserved answers. So when I heard the water running from his shower the next morning, I did it. I grabbed his phone, unlocked it, and for the first time in our entire marriage, I went looking for the truth. And there it was, plain as day. Right there in front of me. Message after message. Texts that made my stomach twist into knots. Flirty, playful, intimate. Him and Vanessa. Miss you already. Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely scroll. I felt like the floor disappeared under me. Like I was free-falling into this cold, suffocating void I couldn't climb out of. My entire marriage, my whole life, it shattered in an instant. But you know what hit me even harder than the messages themselves? It was realizing that while I was blowing out birthday candles, making wishes surrounded by family and friends, she was right there, standing next to me, smiling at me, hugging me, pretending to be my friend, while knowing damn well that she was sleeping with my husband. The humiliation, the betrayal, it wasn't just private, it was public. It happened in front of everyone, and I had no idea. I can't even describe the wave of emotions that hit me. It was like grief and rage collided all at once. One second I was sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. The next, my tears dried up and this fire started building inside me. A fire I didn't even know I was capable of. I kept hearing this voice in my head screaming, how could they? How could he bring her into my birthday, into my home, into my life, like this? The sheer cruelty of it. The audacity. I kept scrolling, hands shaking, reading more, photos, plans, little inside jokes, proof that this wasn't some random mistake. This wasn't some fling that happened once and then faded away. No, this was deliberate, ongoing. And the worst part? They were comfortable. Comfortable enough to flirt while I was right there. Comfortable enough to laugh behind my back. To pretend to be part of my life while stabbing me right in the heart. I felt sick. Physically sick. And then something shifted. The pain started turning into something else, something sharper, something colder. No, I whispered. No. You don't get to do this to me. Not like this. If they were bold enough to parade this affair in front of me, bold enough to smile in my face while tearing apart my marriage. Then, I was going to be just as bold. I was done being the fool in my own story. Done sitting quietly while they laughed behind closed doors. No. This wasn't going to end the way they thought. I sat there staring at his phone, gripping it like it was the last piece of my sanity holding me together. My hands were numb, my chest felt like it was being crushed. But beneath all that, something was crystal clear. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. Not like this. Not quietly. If you two thought you could humiliate me, at my own birthday, in front of everyone I love, well, you have no idea who you've been messing with. I whispered those words like a promise. A vow. It's wild how betrayal can flip a switch inside you. One moment you're the loving wife, trusting, devoted, believing in the life you built together, and the next, you become someone you don't even recognize. Someone colder, sharper, stronger. The version of yourself that only shows up when survival becomes non-negotiable. And in that moment, survival meant one thing: revenge. Not the petty kind, not the impulsive, reckless kind. No, I was going to do this right. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath. And as painful as it was, I started thinking clearly. Clearer than I had in weeks, maybe even years. If you were bold enough to bring this into my birthday, to put her in my photos, in my memories, then I'll be bold enough to make sure everyone knows exactly who you are and what you've done. I stood up, clutching that phone like a weapon. And right then, a plan started forming in my mind. A plan they'd never see coming. I knew I couldn't just confront him in private. No. That would be too easy for him. Too easy for both of them. They needed to feel this the way I felt it. Public, humiliating, undeniable. So with a smile that probably looked far more convincing than it should have, I told Ryan I wanted to host a little dinner. Just to thank everyone who made my birthday so special. Oh, and of course, Vanessa had to come too. Naturally, after all. She was such a dear friend. The look on Ryan's face? Completely unsuspecting. Clueless. He even seemed proud of me. Like, wow, what a thoughtful wife I have. I watched him as he helped me plan it, texting friends, making reservations, suggesting the guest list. Every time he smiled at me, every time he kissed my cheek, I wanted to laugh. Laugh at how utterly blind he was to what was coming. And Vanessa? Oh, she replied to the invitation like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. Of course, I wouldn't miss it for the world. In the days leading up to that dinner, I felt this strange calm wash over me. Like the storm had already passed. Like something inside me snapped and was never going back to the way it was. I wasn't the same woman who smiled at her birthday party thinking her life was perfect. No. That version of me, she was gone. Now, I was someone else. Someone sharper, colder, focused. And as the night approached, all I could think was, you two wanted to turn my birthday into a joke. Well, let's see how you enjoy being the punchline. The night of the dinner arrived, and I swear, you'd think it was any other happy little gathering. Everyone showed up smiling, chatting, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Ryan walked in like the king of the castle, charming, confident, holding my hand like the devoted husband he pretended to be. And Vanessa? Oh, she walked in like she owned the room. Hair perfectly done, that fake little smile plastered on her face, like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. I greeted everyone, hugged them, made small talk, and the entire time, my heart was pounding. Not from nerves, from adrenaline, from power. Because for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I held the cards. Every word I spoke, every glance I threw their way, was calculated. controlled. I watched Ryan laugh. I watched Vanessa sip her wine, pretending to be just another friend. And I thought to myself, keep smiling, sweetheart. Drink it in, because you have no idea what's coming. When dinner was finally served, I stood up, tapped my glass, and smiled as everyone turned to look at me. I just wanted to say a few words, I began, and oh, you could have heard a pin drop. I started soft, sweet, talking about love, trust, gratitude, about how lucky I was to be surrounded by such wonderful friends and family. I watched Ryan relax, smiling proudly at me. I saw Vanessa nodding, sipping her wine, completely at ease. And that's when I felt it. That electric, almost delicious moment. The one right before everything comes crashing down. And then I shifted. My smile didn't fade. It just sharpened. And speaking of gratitude, there's someone very special I'd like to thank tonight. I turned, locking eyes with her. Vanessa. Vanessa, thank you. Not just for being here tonight, but for all the quality time you've spent, entertaining my husband when I wasn't around. The silence was instant, suffocating. You could literally feel the air being sucked out of the room. Ryan's face? Oh, it was like watching a man get hit by a freight train. His jaw dropped. His eyes darted around the table like he was searching for an escape hatch that didn't exist. Vanessa? Pale? Frozen? Her hand still gripping her wine glass mid-sip, like if she stayed perfectly still, maybe, just maybe, she'd disappear. But no. There was no disappearing tonight. Not for them. And just when they probably thought, she's bluffing. There's no way. I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and started reading. Out loud. Message after message. Texts that left no room for doubt. No wiggle room. No explanations. The flirty jokes. The late-night meetups. The photos. The receipts, figuratively and literally. The gasps. The shocked whispers. The looks exchanged around that table. Oh, they were everything. Because at that moment, the truth wasn't just out. It was undeniable. And there was no going back. I didn't stay to watch the aftermath. I didn't need to. I stood there long enough to let it sink in. Long enough to see Ryan's face go ghost white. Long enough to watch Vanessa crumble into a stuttering mess. And then I grabbed my purse, straightened my shoulders, and walked out of that restaurant with my head held higher than it had ever been. Their chaos, their shame, their panic. Not my problem. Not anymore. The moment I stepped outside, it felt like I could finally breathe again. For the first time in a long, long time, the weight wasn't on me. It was on them. And as much as it hurt, God did it hurt, something else started to settle in. This overwhelming sense of freedom, of clarity, of knowing that I wasn't the fool anymore. I wasn't the woman sitting in the dark, wondering what was real and what was a lie. No. I knew the truth now, and the truth had set me free. The next morning, I didn't hesitate. No second guesses, no tears. I filed for divorce, blocked them both on everything. Social media? Gone. Phone numbers? Deleted. Emails? Straight to spam. But you know what I didn't delete? The truth. Oh no. I made sure everyone knew it. Friends, family. Anyone who might have heard his version of things before he had the chance to spin it? No, he wasn't going to rewrite this story. I was. And you know what surprised me the most? The way people showed up for me. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months started reaching out, checking in, offering support, saying things like, I always knew something felt off about him. My phone didn't stop buzzing. Messages, calls, people telling me how proud they were, how brave I was, how they couldn't believe the audacity, but also how they admired the way I handled it. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel broken. I felt powerful. Even people I barely knew started whispering about it. Neighbors, acquaintances, people who had been at that dinner, and even some who had just heard about what happened. Did you hear what Emma did? She caught him cheating and exposed him right there, in front of everyone. Oh, the story spread like wildfire. And honestly, I wasn't ashamed of a single second of it. Why should I be? I didn't break anything. I didn't lie. I didn't betray anyone. That was their mess. I just made sure everyone could see it clearly. And Ryan? Oh, he tried. Of course he did. Tried texting me, calling me, leaving these pathetic voicemails filled with half-baked apologies and desperate excuses. It didn't mean anything. I made a mistake. We can fix this. As if. As if you can set fire to someone's life and then act shocked when there's nothing left to save? No. Not this time. Not me. I was done playing the role of the forgiving, understanding wife. That woman? She didn't exist anymore. I swear. There's this moment after the storm where you just breathe, where the silence isn't scary anymore. It's peaceful, liberating. I remember standing in front of my mirror a few days later, just staring at myself, really looking. Not at the broken woman I thought I'd see, but at someone stronger. Someone who survived something designed to shatter her. Someone who refused to let it. I smiled. Not the same smile from before. A different one. One that said, "I'm still standing, and you didn't win." I whispered to my reflection. They showed up to my party thinking they could humiliate me, thinking they could laugh behind my back, but look who's laughing now. And honestly, I meant every word. Because yes, the betrayal hurt. It broke pieces of me I didn't even know could break. But it also woke something up inside me. Something fierce. Something that refuses to ever be small again. They thought they'd crushed me. What they actually did was set me free. And as I walked away from it all, from him, from her, from that entire mess, I realized something that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Sometimes the worst thing someone does to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. Because now, I'm not just walking away. I'm walking away, winning, with my head high, with my heart intact, and with the last word. And trust me, the last laugh is mine.
Your salary doesn't align with our new compensation structure, Sloane Reeves said flatly, her manicured hands folded neatly on the polished conference table. 2 security guards hovered by the door, their presence making the implication clear. This is effective immediately. I looked at her, taking in the expensive silk blouse and the carefully rehearsed expression of corporate regret. Behind those practiced eyes, I could see what she really thought. That I was just another line item to be trimmed in the post-merger efficiency sweep. I understand, I replied, smiling calmly. I wish you all the best. My name is Marissa Langley. For the past decade, I've led the Enterprise Accounts Division at Crosswell and Pine in Richmond, Virginia. Or rather, I had. I built that department from scratch, cultivating relationships with our top clients until my team was responsible for 40% of the company's annual revenue. 10 years of early mornings and late nights, canceled vacations and postponed family gatherings, all dedicated to making sure our clients felt valued, and in less than 15 minutes, it was over. I gathered my personal items from my office while my team watched in stunned silence. Many had tears in their eyes. I hugged each of them, whispering encouragements and thanking them for their hard work. Then I walked out of the building without protest, my head held high. As the glass doors closed behind me, I took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. The security guard who had escorted me out, Thomas, who'd worked there for 12 years, and whose daughter I'd helped get an internship last summer, looked apologetic. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Langley. This doesn't feel right." "It's okay, Thomas. Change is part of business." But as I drove home, the weight of what had happened finally hit me. I had given everything to Crosswell and Pine. I had delayed starting a family, missed my father's 70th birthday celebration, and worked through pneumonia to close our biggest account. All because I believed in what we were building. When the merger with Ardentix Group was announced 3 months ago, I'd had reservations. Their corporate culture was notoriously cutthroat, and rumors of their strip-and-sell tactics had circulated in the industry for years. But the board had assured us that our company's values would remain intact. Now I understood the truth. This wasn't just a compensation issue. Sloane wanted my clients, but not the person who had earned their trust. She thought those relationships would transfer seamlessly to whoever took my place. I pulled into my driveway, turned off the engine, and smiled to myself. Sloane Reeves was about to learn a valuable lesson about the difference between clients and relationships. The first call came while I was still unpacking my box of office belongings. It was Harold Fletcher, CEO of Fletcher Logistics, one of our largest clients. "Marissa, what the hell is going on? I just heard you're out." "It's true, Harold. The new management decided to go in a different direction." "Different direction? You've been our point person for 7 years. You guided us through that nightmare with the Asia-Pacific expansion. My board trusts you." I could hear the genuine concern in his voice, and it touched me. Harold and I had developed a rapport that went beyond the typical client-vendor relationship. When his wife was diagnosed with breast cancer last year, I'd connected them with the specialist who ultimately saved her life. I appreciate that, Harold, really. But companies change, and so do priorities. Well, our priority is working with people we trust. I'm calling Sloane Reeves myself. Similar conversations followed throughout the day. Each client expressed shock, confusion, and in some cases, outright anger. I was careful not to criticize Crosswell or Ardentix. There was no need. The situation spoke for itself. That evening, my husband James prepared dinner while I sat at our kitchen island, scrolling through dozens of messages from colleagues and clients. "You're taking this remarkably well," he observed, sliding a glass of wine toward me. "What good would falling apart do?" I replied, though the truth was more complicated. I had suspected this might happen from the moment the merger was announced. Ardentix had a pattern: acquire companies with strong client relationships, cut the expensive relationship managers, and hope the clients stayed through inertia. It worked often enough to make it their standard procedure, but they had miscalculated this time. What Sloane didn't understand was that my clients weren't just attached to Crosswell and Pine, they were attached to me. I wasn't just a department head. I was the person who answered their calls at midnight when problems arose, who remembered their children's names, who anticipated their needs before they even realized them themselves. "So, what's your plan?" James asked, knowing me too well to believe I didn't have one. I took a sip of wine and thought about the non-compete clause in my contract. It was stringent, but not impossible to navigate. And more importantly, I knew exactly which clients would follow me once it expired. For now, I'm going to take a much-needed break. Maybe we'll finally take that trip to Portugal we've been talking about. I smiled, but my mind was already racing with possibilities. The news of my termination spread quickly through Richmond's business community. By the following morning, my phone was inundated with messages. Former colleagues, industry contacts, and even competitors expressing their disbelief. I spent the day organizing my home office and responding to messages. Around noon, my former assistant Eliza called. "It's chaos here," she whispered. "Sloane's been in emergency meetings all morning. Fletcher Logistics, Westland Manufacturing, and Davidson Partners all called demanding to know why you were let go." "That sounds stressful," I said neutrally. "Marissa, She's telling everyone that you were asking for an unreasonable compensation package after the merger, that you were being difficult. I laughed softly. That's interesting, considering I was never even given the opportunity to negotiate. Everyone knows it's not true. Your team is furious. We're all updating our resumes. After we hung up, I sat back in my chair, contemplating. Sloane was already crafting a narrative to justify my termination. It was predictable, but short-sighted. The clients knew me too well to believe I'd put personal gain over their needs. Later that afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. Gerald Davidson himself, the 80-year-old founder of Davidson Partners, was standing on my front porch. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said when I opened the door, leaning slightly on his cane. "But some conversations shouldn't happen over the phone." I invited him in and made tea. Gerald had been my first major client when I joined Crosswell and Pine. He had taken a chance on me when I was still proving myself, and that trust had evolved into a friendship that transcended business. "I spoke with Sloane Reeves this morning," he said, his weathered hands wrapped around the teacup. "She fed me some nonsense about restructuring and compensation packages." "That seems to be the official line," I replied. "Marissa, I've been in business for over 50 years. I know when someone's trying to sell me a load of garbage." He set down his cup firmly. "Davidson Partners has been with Crosswell and Pine because of you. When my grandson had that problem with substance abuse, you found him the treatment program that turned his life around. When we needed to pivot during the pandemic, you were there with solutions while everyone else was panicking." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This is a letter formally notifying Crosswell that we're reviewing our contract. I wanted you to know before they did. Gerald, I appreciate your loyalty, but I don't want you to make business decisions based on personal feelings." He smiled, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening. "This is a business decision. Without you there, the quality of service will decline. It's that simple." After Gerald left, I sat with the knowledge that the first domino had fallen. Not because I had pushed it, but because relationships built on genuine care and trust have their own momentum. The realization was both sobering and empowering. I hadn't been just doing a job all these years. I had been building something invaluable. 3 days after my termination, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Marissa Langley speaking." "Marissa, this is Diane Reynolds from Ardentix Legal." Her voice was clipped, professional. "We've noticed some unusual activity with our key accounts and wanted to touch base." I moved to my home office window, gazing out at the maple tree in our front yard, its leaves turning brilliant shades of orange and red. "I'm not sure how I can help with that, Diane. I no longer work for the company." "Yes, but we believe you may be contacting our clients and potentially violating the terms of your non-compete agreement." I had anticipated this call. Sloane was feeling the pressure and looking for someone to blame. "I haven't solicited any business or contacted any clients with the intention of taking their business," I replied truthfully. "If clients have reached out to me personally, that's their prerogative. We have reason to believe you're actively undermining the company." "That's simply not true, Diane. I've been nothing but professional, but I can't control how clients react to my departure." After a tense back and forth, Diane ended with a thinly veiled threat about legal consequences if I violated my agreement. I hung up, unfazed. Later that day, James came home early from his job as a professor at Virginia Commonwealth University. "I bumped into Benjamin Wright at the coffee shop," he said, mentioning a mutual friend who worked on Crosswell's board. "He says all hell is breaking loose. Apparently, 4 major clients have formally requested meetings with the board to discuss your termination." "Really?" This was faster than I'd expected. Benjamin said Sloane's been trying to handle it herself, but the clients are insisting on board involvement. They're questioning her judgment. I allowed myself a small smile. "That's interesting." He also mentioned they had an emergency financial meeting. They're projecting significant losses if these clients leave. Over dinner, we discussed what this might mean. James studied me with a knowing look. You're planning something, aren't you? I twirled spaghetti around my fork. Let's just say I'm considering my options. The truth was, I had spent the day researching what it would take to start my own consulting firm. My non-compete prevented me from directly soliciting Crosswell's clients for a year, but it didn't prevent me from establishing my own business. And if clients happened to follow me once they were no longer contractually bound to Crosswell, well, that would be their decision. The next morning, Eliza called again. They're trying to replicate your client notes, she said. Sloan has the account managers combing through every interaction you documented, trying to piece together the relationships. I nearly laughed out loud. My client notes were meticulous, yes, but they couldn't capture the nuances of relationships built over years. They couldn't record how I remembered that Fletcher's daughter was allergic to shellfish when ordering catering for meetings, or how I always sent Davidson a bottle of his favorite bourbon on his birthday, or how I'd helped Westland's CFO navigate a personal crisis that had threatened to derail a major deal. How's it going for them? I asked. Terribly. Sloan had a call with Fletcher Logistics yesterday that ended with him yelling that reading Marissa's notes isn't the same as being Marissa. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and continued working on my business plan. I called it Langley Strategic Partners. Straightforward and professional. I began drafting a website and creating service packages. As I worked, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Vivian Park from Westland. Dinner tomorrow? There's something I want to discuss. Interesting. Vivian was Westland's CEO, a brilliant tactician known for her direct approach. I'd be delighted, I responded, curious about what she had in mind. Vivian chose a quiet, upscale restaurant on the outskirts of Richmond for our dinner. She was already seated when I arrived, her expression brightening as I approached the table. Marissa, thank you for coming, she said, standing to embrace me briefly. I've missed our conversations. It's only been a week, Vivian, I laughed. A week too long. She gestured for me to sit. I hope you don't mind, but I've invited a few colleagues to join us. Before I could respond, I spotted Harold Fletcher and Gerald Davidson being led to our table. Behind them was Anthony Torres, CEO of Torres Innovations, another of my former key clients. What's going on? I asked as they took their seats. We're staging an intervention, Harold said with a grin that didn't quite mask his seriousness. For Crosswell and Pine. Over appetizers, they revealed that each of them had met with Sloan Reeves and left unimpressed. The board had reached out to some of them directly, trying to smooth things over, but the damage was done. She tried to tell me that your departure wouldn't affect our service level, Anthony said, shaking his head. Then couldn't answer basic questions about our upcoming product launch, information you've had for months. The bigger issue, Vivian added, is trust. How can we trust a company that discards someone like you so carelessly? It shows a fundamental misunderstanding of why we do business with them. I listened, touched by their loyalty but cautious. I appreciate the support, but I don't want to be the reason your companies make decisions that might not be in your best interests. Gerald Davidson tapped his water glass with a spoon. That's precisely why we're here, Marissa. This is about our interests. They had a proposition. They knew about my non-compete agreement, but they also knew it would eventually expire. In the meantime, they wanted to know if I was planning to start my own firm. We've discussed this among ourselves, Harold explained. We're prepared to wait out your non-compete period. When it expires, if you have your own consultancy, we want to be your first clients. We're not asking you to violate any agreements, Vivian clarified. We're just telling you that we'll be reviewing our options when our contracts with Crosswell come up for renewal. I was stunned by their coordinated approach. What about your current projects? We'll fulfill our contractual obligations, Gerald said, but we won't be expanding our services with them, and when the time comes. The implication was clear. They were offering me a lifeline, a guaranteed client base once I could legally work with them again. This is overwhelming, I admitted, in the best possible way. Anthony leaned forward. There's more. We've been talking to other businesses in our networks. There's significant interest in your services, Marissa. People who have heard about how you work, who want that same level of attention and understanding. As dinner progressed, we carefully avoided discussing specific plans or making concrete arrangements that might violate my agreement. Instead, we talked about industry trends, their business challenges, and my perspectives on strategic growth. By dessert, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. These weren't just clients mourning the loss of a service provider. They were allies who valued what I brought to their businesses. As we prepared to leave, Vivian pulled me aside. We heard Sloan has been implying you were difficult during the transition. We all know that's not true, and we've made that very clear to the board. I drove home that night with my mind racing. The dinner had confirmed what I suspected. The relationships I had built were strong enough to withstand this transition. Moreover, they represented an opportunity to create something new, something that truly reflected my values. When I walked through the door, James took one look at my face and knew. Good dinner? Life-changing, I replied. The following week brought a surprising development. I received an email from Lawrence Bennett, chairman of the board at Crosswell and Pine, requesting a meeting. I agreed, suggesting we meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near the river. When I arrived, Lawrence was already there, looking considerably more haggard than when I'd last seen him at the company holiday party 6 months earlier. Thank you for coming, Marissa, he said, shaking my hand firmly. I appreciate your willingness to talk. Of course, Lawrence. What can I do for you? He sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. I'll be direct. The board is concerned about the client response to your departure. We've received formal letters from 6 major accounts expressing their disappointment and indicating they're reviewing their contracts. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. I understand that must be challenging. It's more than challenging. It's potentially catastrophic. He leaned forward. Marissa, the board feels your termination may have been hasty. We'd like to discuss your return to the company. I had suspected this might happen, but hearing it still sent a jolt through me. In what capacity? We're prepared to offer you a promotion. Senior Vice President of Client Relations reporting directly to the board. A significant increase in compensation, of course. And Sloan? She would remain CEO, but your division would operate with considerable autonomy. I took a sip of my coffee, considering his offer. It was tempting, a vindication of sorts, but something felt wrong about it. What happens to my team? The people who are currently trying to manage my client relationships? Lawrence hesitated. There would be some reorganization, naturally. Translation. Those people would be pushed aside to make room for me. The same callous approach that had been used with me would be applied to them. I appreciate the offer, Lawrence, but I need to consider it carefully. He looked relieved, clearly having expected an immediate rejection. Of course. Take the weekend to think about it. After he left, I called James to share the news. Are you considering it? He asked. I don't know, I admitted. It would be easier than starting from scratch. But it would mean working under the woman who fired me without cause, in a company culture that's shifting away from everything I value. That evening, I received another surprising call, from Eliza. I shouldn't be telling you this, she began, her voice hushed. But Sloan had another meltdown today. Westland Manufacturing informed her they won't be renewing their contract when it expires next quarter. She's blaming everyone but herself. How are you holding up? I asked, concerned for my former team. It's getting worse. 2 of the account managers have already quit. The rest of us are just trying to keep things from completely falling apart. After we hung up, I sat in my home office for a long time thinking. The board's offer represented the easy path, back to the familiar, with the added satisfaction of Sloane having to acknowledge her mistake. But returning would mean compromising on the vision that had been forming in my mind since my termination. Langley Strategic Partners could be something different. A firm that truly prioritized relationships over transactions, that saw clients as partners rather than revenue streams. I picked up my phone and dialed Lawrence's number. "I've made my decision," I told him when he answered. "I appreciate the offer, but I must decline. Marissa, please reconsider." "My decision is final, Lawrence, but I wish you and the company all the best." As I hung up, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that ultimately set us free. 6 months passed quickly. I spent the time meticulously building the foundation for Langley Strategic Partners. I secured office space in a renovated historic building downtown, developed a comprehensive service model, and hired a small but talented team, including Eliza and 2 other former colleagues who had left Crosswell and Pine. I was careful to adhere strictly to my non-compete agreement, focusing on developing relationships with businesses outside of Crosswell's client base. Word spread quickly in Richmond's business community, and I found myself fielding inquiries from companies I'd never worked with before. Meanwhile, the situation at Crosswell and Pine continued to deteriorate. Through the grapevine, I heard that Fletcher Logistics had reduced their contract by 60%. Davidson Partners had shifted all new projects to other firms. Westland Manufacturing had not renewed their contract at all. The morning my non-compete officially expired, I woke up feeling oddly calm. This was the day I had been working toward, but there was no need to make dramatic moves. The groundwork had already been laid. I arrived at the office early and had just settled at my desk when my phone rang. "Is today the day?" Harold Fletcher asked without preamble. I smiled. "It is." "Excellent. I'm sending over the contract we discussed. We've been holding this project specifically for you." By noon, I had received similar calls from Vivian, Gerald, and Anthony. By the end of the week, Langley Strategic Partners had signed contracts with 5 former Crosswell clients, representing nearly $2 million in annual revenue. I hadn't poached a single client. I hadn't needed to. They had come to me of their own accord, precisely as we had discussed that night at dinner 6 months earlier. The most satisfying moment came when my assistant forwarded an email that had been sent to my new company address. It was from Sloane Reeves, requesting a meeting to discuss potential collaboration opportunities. I politely declined. 1 year after my termination, Langley Strategic Partners had grown to a team of 15, serving 22 clients across various industries. We had moved to larger offices and were developing a reputation for excellence and integrity. I was reviewing quarterly projections when Eliza knocked on my office door. "You have a visitor," she said, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Sloane Reeves." I raised an eyebrow. "I don't recall having an appointment with her." "You don't. She just showed up and insisted on seeing you." I sighed. "Send her in." Sloane entered my office, looking far less polished than she had the day she fired me. The confident posture was gone, replaced by a tense, almost desperate energy. "Marissa, thank you for seeing me," she began, taking the seat across from my desk without waiting for an invitation. "What can I do for you, Sloane?" She took a deep breath. "I'll be direct. Crosswell and Pine is struggling. We've lost 40% of our revenue since your departure. The board is considering drastic measures, including a potential sale of the company." I waited, suspecting there was more. "I wanted to propose a merger between our companies. Your client relationships combined with our infrastructure could be powerful." The irony was almost too perfect. "A merger," I repeated. "Yes, with you taking a leadership role, of course." I studied her, recognizing the desperation behind her proposition. This wasn't about collaboration. It was about survival. "I'm afraid that won't be possible," I said finally. Our companies have fundamentally different approaches to business and client relationships. Marissa, please. I wish you all the best, Sloane, truly, but my answer is no. As she left, I felt no triumph or vindication, just a quiet confirmation that I had made the right choice in creating something new rather than trying to fix what was broken. The revenge I had imagined wasn't in watching Crosswell and Pine struggle, but in the success I had built from the ground up. I had proven my value not through confrontation, but through consistency and care. I learned that sometimes the most powerful response isn't fighting back, it's moving forward. And in that forward motion, I found not just success, but fulfillment.